Hello, I'm Andy Burke and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 11th of November. And today we're going beyond the Premiership to look at what's going on in Scotland's other leagues. The Championship continues to throw up surprises as pace-setters St Johnstone and Partick Thistle both fail to win. Points for all the bottom three at the weekend. Can Airdrie, Queen's Park and Ross County pull themselves back into the pack? Are Inverness starting to pull away in League One as Stenny stumble again? And can Clyde make it a three-horse race for the League Two title?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, great to be joined this morning by Craig Telfer, presenter of A View from the Terrace. Craig, how are you getting on this morning? Is the heating kicked in your house sufficiently?
No, we are still plodding on without putting the heating on. So Eon will not have me over a barrel until it gets to the stage where that is impossible for them to do.
I admire your resolve well into November. Fair play to you. Also great to be joined by Ryan Flynn, the Arbroath midfielder. Ryan, how are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to have you with us. Plenty to get into with the guys, so let's get stuck right in with the league leader, St Johnstone. Craig, cracking game at East End Park on the weekend. Managed to take a point in a pretty tough venue, but they seem to have just rediscovered their mojo a bit, St Johnstone, the last few weeks.
I think so. It looked like an absolutely fantastic game at East End Park. Some really, really good goals, lots of excitement. Certainly watching the highlights from Dunfermline Athletic, just such a great match. It was almost like watching a game of basketball. And I think that since the defeat at Arbroath, Simo Valakari, I remember watching him speaking after the game saying this was the biggest challenge they were going to face this season. How do you bounce back? And they've done it in the best way possible. They yet to lose a match since then, still playing with flair, still playing with intensity. But I think the only disappointment from the weekend was knowing they could have put a wee bit more daylight between themselves and Partick Thistle with them dropping points on the Friday night at Airdrieonians. Other than that, however, it just feels like there's very little to complain about for St Johnstone. I know that seems quite a pretty obvious thing to say, but it's obvious because it's true. It's been a really strong season for them so far, and I think that's likely to continue well past the winter and into the spring months.
Yeah, and I think plenty of teams will drop points, Ryan, at East End Park. It was a great game, and Dunfermline showed a bit of heart and a bit of fight to come back to take something from that.
Yeah, and a bit of quality as well. I thought they gave a great account of themselves. The first goal, lovely goal for Barney Stewart. And I think it was just a great advert for Scottish football on the whole. I mean, nearly 7,000 there, two top teams, two top players. I thought both clubs, there's a real connection between the players, the manager and the fans. So it had a great mix of everything. And then obviously being 2-1 down against the league leaders, the top side, to have that character, as you've said, that never say die attitude, and they get the just rewards. Listen to Neil Lennon's interview after the game, he was definitely pleased with the performance. It sounds like he gave them a bit of a jab at half time, but they definitely responded, and it was a real advert for Scottish football.
And it's great as well, just on that, the two goal scorers, Barney Stewart and Andy Todd, the Dunfermline scorers, both being called up to the Scotland under-21s. I think there were perhaps, I didn't realise that Barney Stewart was actually eligible to play for Scotland, but certainly Todd was, and I think that speaking prior to the call-up, Lennon was a bit miffed that Todd hadn't been called up in the first instance because he's having a really good season. So it's great to see him get called up, and spoke about him in last week's podcast. I think he's brilliant. I love watching him play. I think the more I see him, he's like a wee boy playing playground football with his big brother and his mates. And so he's got that quite scrappy street footballer style, but he's Neil Lennon's developing him to a really handy attacker, and it's great to see him get his rewards with a call up for the under-21s.
I was just going to say in the back of that, Dunfermline, they sort of had that stutter start at the start of the season, and then everyone's talking about they're a young side. But I feel like they're a young side that are learning really quickly, which can only be positive for Dunfermline. And I think everyone's talking about St Johnstone and Partick Thistle. I would put Dunfermline as the top three teams. Maybe points difference, it's going to be a tough ask to claw that up. But for me, they're the three best sides in the league.
I just think it's like defensively, sometimes they can be a wee bit suspect. I remember, for instance, watching the game against Ross County, which they lost 3-2, and all 3 goals he gave away. A bit of naivety, and I think, but these are the things that they're learning from. They're showing the prowess in attack, and I think that in time they'll iron these out. But a lot of people are learning at the same time, so that's probably the tricky thing for Dunfermline. But there's certainly a real brio and vibrancy to watching them. So, good side to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, very interesting times at Dunfermline. The Friday night game, Airdrieonians and Partick Thistle, as Craig mentioned earlier, Ryan. But what do you make of Partick Thistle at the moment? Just a little bit stop-start. They seem to be getting it going, and then they'll drop points, and maybe need to just get that little bit more consistent. It's going to be tough to keep pace with St Johnstone, the way they've picked up again. But where do you see Partick at the moment?
No, I would probably disagree slightly. I think it's obviously everyone's waxing lyrical about St Johnstone being so good. It's only 3 points of a difference. I thought Mark Wilson's interview after the game was really honest. It was a disappointing performance, but at the end of the day, it's still a point on the board away from home. You can never argue with that in the Scottish Championship. They've got some real attacking threat. I mean, it was a poor performance by Partick Thistle standards on Friday night. A bit of quick thinking of Tony Watt. They got Chalmers down the right-hand side, ball across, and probably Turner or Fitzpatrick should have finished it in the end. Barring that chance, I can't really think of many clear-cut opportunities that they actually had. Airdrie definitely did. Definitely should have took the 3 points, but taking a point away from home, it's always pleasing, and they just keep rolling on. I definitely think they'll be there or thereabouts come the end of the season at the top end of the table.
Well, talk to us about your result on the weekend, Ryan. Capello is always a real difficult place to go, but what did you make of it? I'm guessing a sense of disappointment. You're coming away with nothing.
Yeah, exactly that. I think going into the game after such a positive result against Ross County at home, I think it's just you're looking to be positive. I think we started the game really well, started really bright. Cammy McPherson, a little bit quick thinking from him, took a quick free kick, we switched off, ball in the box, 1-0 down, and I think that's where we have not reacted well enough. I don't know if it's sort of a mentality shift. They got their tails up, and then second half, Duke Emery's side really shut up shop, made it difficult for us. It's a hard one, but I think throughout this course of the season, we've got the highs of the highs. We beat St Johnstone, we go and lose away to Airdrie. We beat Ross County, we go and lose away to Morton. So it's definitely a learning curve for us. But one we just never too high, never too low this season, and so far so good. We've managed to stay an even keel so far and keep picking up points along the way.
You should have had a penalty.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I prefer for you to say it to me. I'll come up with that.
Yeah, very diplomatically left that out there. Fair play. Ross County. I feel like every week, Craig, we're discussing what is going on with Ross County and why can they not just seem to get things going. 3-1 up at home to Ayr and pegged back. Tony Dock must be scratching his head as to why he can't get this team motoring.
Yeah, they're such a difficult side to pin down, and Tony Docherty's record, that's 2 wins, 4 draws and 4 defeats. The team don't look any better than they were really under Don County at the beginning of the season, and the more that you see them, and there just seems to be a mental fragility there. Tony Docherty said that when he came in the club. There's a mental fragility there, and I think that there's a group of players there who, on paper, are very good players. You've got one of the best strikers in the division, and Ronan Hale, probably a Premiership striker actually, that's probably punching below his weight there. You've got such a good player there, but they seem a bit like weak up top here, and it feels like it's a bunch of names who have been good at various stages of their career that have all just been brought together. There doesn't seem to be any coherence. I think they've got too many players there, too many players that want to do the same thing, and Tony Dock's trying to fit them into this system. And sometimes he's picking players out of position, and it's not like he's not being well back, because he was able to bring in a number of players in before deadline day. A bunch of boys came in on loan. It just feels like it's such an expensively assembled team that no one's able to get a tune out of. And at the stage where they look a wee bit adrift in ninth place from the rest of the teams going on, it's been an absolute disaster of a season. And I don't know the answer to why that's been the case or how they pull themselves out of it, but a lot of money's been spent and they're not getting value from it.
Yeah, Ryan, it's a curious one, Ross County, isn't it? And we do see it sometimes when teams go down and everyone fancies them to be strong enough to maybe bounce straight back up. But some teams and some players really struggle to adjust dropping down a league. And as you said near the top, like in the Championship, nobody's giving you an easy ride. You can't go anywhere and expect to get points easy.
Exactly that. Maybe one of the things I'd say is you've got players with real quality there, but I think it's that mentality shift off when you're at Ross County and you're in the Championship. It's the mentality shift off not playing well is you need to win games of football, and winning any game of football and going into a game knowing that you have to win. That's probably the mental shift that I think is really difficult for the club and the players at the time. And I think that's why, obviously, when you speak about maybe the top two in Scottish football, that they have that expectation to win week in, week out, and they deliver most weeks, maybe not this season. When it comes to the Championship, probably St Johnstone are the only team that are really had that expectation from the start of the season and really delivered with that. It's a real hard one to go into games and knowing you have to win games of football. And that you can sort of feel that with Ross County as soon as teams get close around them, that mentality shift that they're hanging on, even though they've got the players to maybe go and blow teams away. So it's a difficult one for them. Tony Docherty after the game was trying to be positive, and so was Scott Brown after the 3-3 draw. I don't know if you can really feel that, but they're definitely trying to drive the positivity from the 3-3 draw there.
Well, let's wrap up the Championship, lads. And Craig, a good win for Queen's Park over Wraith Rovers, just their second league win of the season. And they're not winning a lot of games, but they are drawing a lot of games. I think they've drawn half their league games, 7 from 14 so far this season. They're 8th at the moment. Where do you see them ending up? Can they start to get themselves away from that relegation playoff spot, or do you see them being sucked in?
I'm going to say no. I think it's going to be a long, difficult season for Queen's Park. However, they do have perhaps the most ruthless striker in the division in the ranks in Josh Fowler. His 2 goals against Wraith Rovers were supremely well taken, especially the first one. This is a guy who, he doesn't need a lot of time to set his sights. He's very good at shooting powerfully and accurately and early. Very difficult for goalkeepers to place themselves, and his 2 goals are excellent. And I think he is a massive difference between Queen's Park, really getting suckered into a relegation battle and maybe challenging for 9th and 8th. I went to see them play Arbroath a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't have Josh Fowler, and because they didn't have Josh Fowler, they couldn't get the ball up the pitch, and so Arbroath were basically just able to kettle Queen's Park into their own half. With Fowler, however, he just completely opens up a different dimension for the Spiders. So it's great to see him doing well, and I'm delighted for Sean Crichton. I really, really like Sean Crichton, former Stennismuir captain, and he knows the difficulty that he's got in his hands with what he's trying to do with the Queen's Park downsizing, lack of resource, a small group of players that he's got to work with, the serious injury to Charlie Fox last week. He's got a really difficult job in trying to galvanise that. So for him to get the first win at home since I think it was the 4th of January, and then at the end to be able to get his wee boy onto the park as well. Just great stuff. Delighted for him, and I hope it continues. But I think everyone at Queen's Park knows it's a difficult challenge ahead. But hopefully, Crichton can do the business with them.
Right, lads, let's turn our attention to League One, and Craig, more drop points for Stenny at home to Kelty. What is going on at Oakview?
It was not Stenny's best performance at the weekend. Maybe actually the first half performance was the poorest I've seen from them this season. But by the same token, Kelty Hearts were really good. And despite the fact they've had a really poor run of results, thought they were really good, especially in the first half. Alex Ferguson, Aaron Arnott, really strong performances from them. And Rico Dyack up front was just really difficult to play against all afternoon. Strong player on loan from Partick Thistle. A bit rough around the edges, but definitely has quality. What I would say, however, is rather than saying, that's more drop points for Stennismuir, flip it the other way. That's Stennismuir digging out of a point in late on in the game. And to go 2-0 down, and for Matty Aitken to pull one back and Scott McGill to hit probably the hardest shot I've seen all season, I'd say that's a mentality monsters there from the Warriors. That's a never say die attitude. And had the game gone on a wee bit longer, I actually think they could have won it. But in this circumstance, I won't say credit to Kelty Hearts. They will be absolutely gutted like that, and it will feel like a defeat. But if they can show the same sort of poise they did in that first half going into the rest of the campaign, then they should be in better stead to pull away from the bottom of the table.
I can see a career in management for you, Craig. That positive spin, very impressive.
I've been watching too many Tony Docherty interviews. That's
politics.
All politics, aye. Spin doctor. What about Inverness, Ryan? They're 3 points clear now. Do you sense they're starting to get into their stride and looking like they could be the team to go on and win the title?
Without a doubt, I think they're definitely the favourites as it stands at the moment. It was a 1-0 victory, but the most dominant 1-0 victory you could probably come across. That was chance after chance, real dominant display. I just can't see anyone coming close to really claw them back in. I think it's got to be Inverness. It's got to be standards that are going to have to drop if there's going to be any turnaround or anyone closing the gap over the course of the season. They just look so in control of the game. It's the football they play. I also like Devine and Savage at the back. I just think they're real rocks off it. Last season, when they had the points deduction, they pulled it back. They had the points deduction this season. They allow the rest of the team to go and play with that freedom that they know that they play openly, they play expressive, but when they lose the ball, you've got they two at the back that they just seem to mop it up, and they're real dominant forces in that league.
The only criticism you probably give Inverness is that they don't score enough goals. I mean, in that game against Cove Rangers there, Ryan, you've summed up brilliantly there. But they just had so many chances to put the ball in the back of the net and didn't take it. And their last three games, it's like 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. That's really impressive. That it depends what way you want to look at it. They get very tight at the back and just nicking games, but they are creating tons of chances in that, but not necessarily taking them. They dropped points against Kelty Hearts about a month or so ago. They went 2 goals down and drew 2 each. That's the consequence of not taking your chances, dropping points, because in that game again against Kelty, they did create so many opportunities to score. They're just not taking it. So that's perhaps the only thing to watch out for them. That's the only criticism, not ruthless enough in front of goal.
And Ryan, Alloa, great result for them. 4-0 away to Montrose. They're up to second. I mean, they're going along very nicely at the moment.
They're probably, Andy Graham's got them going along quietly. No one's really had their eyes on them. Obviously, they've got Liam McFarlane in goals that I think really steadies the ship at the back there. I was probably surprised at how, like, going up on Stuart Peachtrey's side, he'll be disappointed sort of getting rolled over. It was a convincing 4-0 victory, real quality goals. Hetherington's ball in for the second goal was delightful. Skugel running through and goal, a good bit of football there. It was just, they're really, as you say, they're ticking along nicely. They play good football. They've got experience throughout their team. They've got a bit of youngsters in there, fresh legs. They could be ones that they'll definitely be. They're normally in and around the playoffs, but I fancy them to be in the playoffs come the end of the season.
This is an example. Again, I agree with everything you're saying there. They've got the solid foundations. They've got a load of good experienced players in there. A really strong midfield with Curtis Roberts, Stevie Hetherington and Stefan Skugel. But I think what's perhaps one of the most notable things about this Alloa team is how well they've been able to take advantage of the cooperation agreement. They've got an agreement on with Rangers, and the 2 boys that they've got on loan, Callum Adamson and Callum Burnside, they're the 2 players that just give the team that extra bit of razzmatazz. They're the sort of players that just look the kind of players that fans want to see get on the ball and can sort of make things come out of nothing. And they've got a boy, Andy Clark, who is a medical student who had played full-time football in Northern Ireland. He's the boy that puts the ball over for Stefan Skugel for the 3rd goal. And you describe that chip through as impudent. That's how I describe that. So there's a bit
early for that. Team. A bit early to be pulling out the big guns, the old vocabulary. Very impressive. I tell you, Hamilton were very impressive, Craig. 3-0 win over Peterhead, and we've spoken often enough about the absolute chaos going on behind the scenes at Hamilton. I suppose it's testament to the players that they kind of put all that to one side and deliver a performance like that.
I think so. I think John Rankin is a manager who has had a lot to deal with during the short time at Hamilton Academical, but to try and galvanise the fan base and galvanise this group of players, I think that's something that he probably deserves a bit more credit for. And although Hamilton do have some very good players in their ranks, that starting 11 is really impressive. You go beyond that there isn't a lot there. So the challenge is for these players to be fit and be on form all the time. And certainly, judging by the calibre of the performance against Peterhead at the weekend, they're doing that. Ollie Shaw was the standout player. Some really, really nice finishing. Could have been a hat-trick. He hit the bar late on. But just the players around him as well. Some of the link-up play and the passes. They're a strong team. They're slick. Having seen them a couple of times earlier in the season, they're quite a difficult side to pin down, especially against some of the part-time teams. So I would expect Hamilton, although they've had the points deduction, I would fancy them to be in the mix for promotion. That starting 11's too good to be anywhere else.
Yeah, they're only 2 points off the playoff places. And the bottom three, Ryan, Montrose, Kelty and Cove, they're kind of a little bit adrift now. Would you expect those three to be battling out for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think they're definitely playing a mini league. It's probably quite concerning. Shipping goals, not looking to score goals. All three teams, I mean, we spoke before about Cove, not just, they're lacking players more than anything. It was interesting listening to Craig there about Kelty Hearts having a little bit of fight and a little bit of spirit. Maybe they're the one that can maybe string a couple of results together to try and finish top of that little bottom three. But no, it's going to be a difficult ask. They're both playing tonight. Well, they're all playing tonight, but Kelty and Montrose playing against Kelty's playing against Hearts B and Montrose playing against Hibs B. And although they're already qualified, I think it's an important game for the group of players when they're lacking that confidence. Make this a real serious game. Play your strongest team. Go and get goals. Go and get a clean sheet, and try and take a bit of confidence going into the next game. I think when it's like that one game can just change your season, and hopefully for them it could be tonight. It's not so much the points for the famous Champions League Challenge Cup that they're playing in, but I just think they need to do something, and I think it starts tonight with 8 games in the Challenge Cup.
Well, let's take a look at League Two, and a result to probably raise a few eyebrows. Craig, Spartans held away to Forfar, and they've got a big one against Clyde coming up next, so that was maybe not the preparation they were hoping for.
Do you know something? I think on another day, Spartans could have won this quite comfortably. They created a number of really good openings. Just a combination of like poor finishing and good goalkeeping prevented them from taking something from the game. So probably a missed opportunity for the Spartans, but I don't think it's anything to be concerned of in the grand scheme of things. I still fancy them to. They've got all the qualities you want from like just a good like lower league side, where you've got just like big laddies at the back that are hard to play against and can kick the ball and head the ball really far away from goal, and then lots of quality in attack, like guys like Cammy Russell, for instance, is having a good season. So disappointing, and especially with East Kilbride getting the win over Stirling Albion to narrow that gap. But I think, if I was Dougie Samuel, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Just maybe a bad day at the office in front of goal. And Clyde, just to touch on them, I think it was perhaps a missed opportunity dropping points at home to Stranraer there. Not their best performance this season, but you would say Stranraer have improved a lot since the beginning of the season. They've, including their Scottish Cup win over Glenafton, that's 3 wins and a draw in their last couple of games. So Stranraer are beginning to, I think a lot of the players are just getting used to the environs and playing in League Two. A lot of young boys who are all learning at the same time. A lot of boys who have stepped up from like the West of Scotland Premier Division, for instance. So I think it's probably a decent point for Clyde in the circumstances. But again, for the Spartans and Clyde, I wouldn't be too concerned about not winning at the weekend.
Yeah, Clyde unbeaten in 7 as well.
I was going to say on Stranraer, they're just like, I think it's 1 defeat in their last 9 games. And obviously it's including cup competitions as well, but they're a team that I remember being on this podcast, and I was I couldn't see whether they were going to get a win or a goal, and how they've turned their season around has been remarkable. Really, they've had some massive wins, so it maybe isn't as disappointing as a point for Clyde. I just think Stranraer, maybe they are still down there. It's going to still be a tough season, but they have turned it around and they're a much better side. And probably they've got a keeper with Josh Lane at the back on loan from Hamilton. He's had a tremendous season. He was good last season, the back end of last season, and he's having another top season.
Well, Craig, we spoke about Edinburgh City on the podcast last week, and I think the feeling was now they were back in the black in terms of their points. They were going to pick up and really go on a run. Real bad result at home to Elgin on the weekend.
It's been they've not won a game at home all season, which seems ridiculous. Given, it's like Meadowbank, it's like you want to make the place a fortress. I don't understand why they found it so difficult to win at home. But this was a real game of two halves for Edinburgh City. I think they took the lead fairly early on through Jack Duncan, but the second half was just a bit of a disaster for them. He's been an absolutely phenomenal player for them, but Mark Weir was culpable for the first and second goals. The free kick went right through him. The second one, he just doesn't catch the ball, and it puts the defence under pressure, and they capitulate from there. So I don't want to dig the big guy out because he has been a phenomenal player for them, and he's won them a lot more points than he's cost them. But I think there was some of the changes in the second half for McIndoe, just like switching players round, playing players out of position. It felt like a wee bit overthinking things on his part. I'm still confident they can go on for a good season. However, they've got a huge game at the weekend. It's against Annan Athletic at Galabank, so probably a bonus for them as they're playing away from home. But it feels like if this is a 6-pointer, I know there's a whole clutch of teams bunched in at the bottom there, that's just a couple of points separating, but it feels psychologically for Edinburgh, feels massive. If you win this, you really cut that gap to 6 points. If not, and the results go against you, you could be like 12 points further adrift, and then it becomes less about trying to get into the promotion playoffs and then just doing your best to avoid finishing in last place. So difficult. Being a disappointing run at home, but I don't know. I don't think anyone can really put their finger on why that's been the case.
Yeah, and as you say, that is a huge game this weekend. Guys, it's been a real pleasure to have your company this morning. That's just about all we've got time for. Many thanks to Craig and Ryan, and thanks to you at home for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. But for now, from Craig, from Ryan and from me, thanks for listening.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the sorer obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing,
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is,
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a ball map. A ball map.
Look at the ball map.
What we normally do is spin the ball map and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.